which looks at the demand management metrics and which of those demand management metrics do you actually report on. Again, ranging from none all the way through to the last one we looked at, really, which was the prediction report, where we're not only measuring what we're spending, but able to predict how we think it's going to look at the end of the month.
Just to let you know, in terms of our last polling question, how many of you have got a service catalogue or different aspects. 48% of you actually currently don't have a service catalogue, and another 23% have a sort of basic service catalogue. I mean, that's not unusual. We are finding that many organisations are still quite new to this, so it's a good time to be getting into looking at this and doing this, but still quite a high percentage that have no service catalogue at all. Okay, I'll pass you back to Mark.
Okay, that was the demand management part. The next report that we're going to look at, or type of report that we're going to look at, is very much cost management based. And here we're looking at, this is more of a, rather than a dashboard, this is more of a traditional hard copy report, but again, as I said, we can produce it in a number of different ways. And what this is trying to identify is the actual spend against service, and we've grouped it here by the areas of the business. So not only can we tell how much we're spending against individual services, but we can each now start to show the departmental managers or divisional managers how much their departments are spending on the services that we actually provide. This is obviously extremely beneficial again because it allows the business perhaps to analyze this information and then perhaps reduce some of that spend if they find their users are requesting maybe a service that's more expensive than another one. They can hopefully influence them to choose those cheaper services. It also allows us hopefully to start predicting future request levels and costs as well, because we're getting good information about the services, how many requests are made against those services, and what it's costing us and costing the business as well. So the outcomes from this type of reporting, as we said, gives us the ability to identify those services which are actually the most costly to provide. It also allows IT to start demonstrating the value that they provide to the business, and this is something that IT have historically been bad at, is being able to actually say to the business, and here is the benefit that we provide and the value that we provide to you as a business. It obviously now passes information, good costing information, to departmental managers so they can actually see where they're spending their budget with IT, not just disappearing into a black hole, but now they can actually see exactly whereabouts they're spending that. And therefore it gives them the opportunity to perhaps rationalize the services they need and hopefully reduce the costs by rationalizing those services. The next screen really is looking at just a refresher. We talked earlier about the information that we can store against SLAs, and the next lot of reports we're going to be looking at are service level management reports. So it was just a refresh here to show you the types of information that we can store against services. As we saw earlier, we can store detailed information against the service, but we can also store when it's available, the days that it's not available, and that type of information. So from that type of information there, we can start to produce some service level management. And here we have a report, a metric, which shows us how we're performing against SLAs. And this shows us against, obviously today, how we're performing today, but also in the whole month as well. So we can get a very good view there of how we're performing, not just today, but over the whole month. And because we can obviously start to show this type of information, we can see, and the business can see, how well we are meeting those service requests within the agreed SLAs. This ensures that we know if requests are meeting SLAs or looking like they're going to breach SLAs. We can allocate the appropriate resources to hopefully meet them within those SLAs. And it also allows us to identify the areas which are taking the longest. So as we saw with the workflow diagram a little bit earlier, if we can identify that one particular stage is consistently holding up the requests, then we can identify what the issues are and hopefully fix that. We've got a slightly different variation there on this now. You can have it in that kind of speedo diagram that we have there. We also have the ability to show it in different ways, and that's one of these things about a number of these reports. The examples and the illustrations we've given you here are one way of doing it, but you can actually produce a number of different types of chart. Here we have a more pie chart based thing, which is showing us really the same sort of information, just in a slightly different format. Another service level report here. Again, we are looking at things that are near breach, but we're looking at here by the departments that are actually working on those particular events. So we can start to see how many each department, how many each IT department actually has they're working on that are near the breach time as well. So by doing this, by showing this type of graph, IT are able to respond more accurately and more efficiently against the requests that might be breaching, and we can identify very quickly the areas where we're struggling, perhaps need more resource, perhaps we need to if there's an issue with some of these areas. So it just gives us a very good heads up on exactly the current situation with our requests and how close they are to breaching. So the outcomes from SLAs, as we said, we can identify which requests are breaching SLAs, which is obviously very important. Many organizations will report on that, and we'll have regular review meetings that discuss those breaches. But it also allows us to identify, hopefully then, why those requests are breaching their SLAs. That's one of the most important things here. It would be nice to always, or it would be nice to never breach an SLA, but we are going to sometimes. But the important lesson to learn from it is, why did we breach those SLAs? And this type of reporting can show us that. Hopefully then we can start to identify the solutions to those issues, identify the reasons why the SLAs are breaching, and then fix them. And that will obviously improve the delivery of requests. There will be obviously now hopefully more on time, and increase customer satisfaction, which is one of the intangible benefits here that we really are looking for, is to make our users appreciate the service we actually deliver to them. We've got another type of example of report next, which really is one of the questions we often get asked when we're talking about SLAs, is what does an SLA look like? And we have an example here of our typical type of SLA document. This isn't the only one. There are many different examples, but we find this is quite an interesting example, where we have a description of the SLA, what it covers, details about it, the hours, and the response times as well. So on one page, we actually have a number of the whole detail of the SLA contained on a single page. Let's say it's not the only example. There are many others, but we find that's quite an interesting example. Next up is another polling question. And this look at cost management metrics that we've looked at a few slides back, and what type of cost metrics do you currently report on? So again, it reaches from the absolutely none all the way up to cost per individual service.
So while you're doing that, I can just let you know that the last question, again, a high percentage, more than 50% of you are not doing any demand management reporting. Only a small percentage of you really are doing any of that at all, and it's one of those areas I think that we all need to look at, and we can get value.
Okay, one of the things we're going to look at now, this is another refresher screen here. We showed you this earlier, which is the service catalog, and it shows you the types of service that we can provide to the end users. So we would hopefully roll this out and find a good take-up of people actually using this. The next type of report we want to look at then is a user interaction report, and what this does is it will tell us the take-up and of the service catalog, and we will see how many people are requesting services through the service catalog, as we can see here, perhaps through the service desk, or perhaps you have another method, maybe online forms that they can fill in as well. But obviously this is very useful, because if we've rolled out the service catalog and we want people to use it, because that will decrease the load on IT, then we want to be able to prove that people are actually using it. So this type of graph shows us exactly that. It shows us how well it's been taken up and how many requests are being made by these different methods. From this, or analysis of this information, we can maybe start to identify areas that aren't taking this up very well and re-educate them on that, but also might help from a resourcing perspective, allow us to look at the future resourcing requirements of the service desk, for example. We've also got what we call a total service performance report here, and this one ties back really to the supply chain slide that Barclay talked about earlier, where users request things, they go into the distribution and get delivered. Because here we have a number of different KPIs, key performance indicators, that are displayed on one particular graph. And we can see on the left-hand side the services there, and we can measure against that the demand, against the budget for those services, the requests against the projections, if there are any requests that are near SLAs or breached SLAs. So we can see very clearly on a very small graph the areas we need to focus on, because we obviously want to try and intercept or stop any of these areas reaching a critical point. So anything that turns amber, for example, there, we can maybe start to investigate why that is and see if we can actually resolve that particular issue. And as I say, the benefits here, it provides a good indication of the health of a number of different services. It gives us those warnings, it gives us that heads up of potential issues with those services, which we can investigate and, as we said, perhaps stop it becoming critical. The next one is we have a number. Now we can see how we can display this. We actually have a number of dashboard views here on the one screen. This could perhaps be put up on the service desk on a large monitor perhaps, and you can see here we have a number of the graphs and the reports we've talked about displayed on one screen. And again, really it's a kind of state of the nation. It's showing us areas that perhaps we need to take notice of, to perhaps start investigating a little bit more closely, because it looks like some areas might be hitting a stage where they're getting critical, or there might be some disruption about to follow. So this really is there giving us on one screen heads-up information that will hopefully allow us to avert potential problems with the services and the IT infrastructure we're actually running. Another polling question now again, which is looking at the service level management metrics. So which service level management metrics do you report on? Again, none, all the way up to incidents near SLA breach.
And just once again, our last question set, a whopping 67% of you are not doing any cost management reporting, which I guess is a bit concerning because there's more and more demand on IT to be cost conscious, cost focused and business focused, so we really need to try and plug that gap a little bit.
Okay, a couple of final slides then. First one really looking at the benefits that metrics can bring to an organization. Excuse me. Good metrics certainly can help optimize the performance of an entire organization. If we're now producing data and reporting and metrics that shows exactly how the organization is performing, then we really can start to optimize the way we operate, the way we work, to ensure that we can make some cost savings or make the operation much more efficient. It allows direct focus on specific performance objectives, so we can now identify exactly where we should be focusing to reap the best benefit from what we're actually reporting on, which areas are the ones that are going to give us the greatest return. It makes it easier to spot trends. As we said, if we can now report on a weekly or monthly basis, we can start to identify those demand trends or any trend and start to predict and counteract any issues we might have with what we're seeing in those trends. It helps align IT with the business goals, and if you've been listening to these webcasts before, you will hopefully remember that it's one of the big messages that we've had throughout these webcasts is that one of the things we have to do is we have to get IT in the business talking together, actually having a good, firm communication and relationship between those two areas. And this is the same with metrics. If we can actually show the business that we're reporting good information that helps them be more efficient, then that's going to help that alignment as well. It drives efficiency, effectiveness and quality because we are reporting on the right areas. We're identifying the areas we need to focus on that will help us become more efficient,